cracking down on made in USA claims. Leonard Gordon is advertising and marketing group leader with Venable LLP. Hello, Leonard.
Hello, Robert. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for being with me today. Tell me about the Federal Trade Commission's recent guidance on how to approach made in USA claims.
Sure. The FTC has been active over the last 10 to 20 years on made in USA claims. It doesn't make a difference whether it's a Democrat or Republican leading the administration. It's been a constant area of emphasis. The FTC is concerned that consumers' purchasing decisions are influenced by a claim that a product is made in the USA, perhaps that someone's paying more for a product that's advertised as made in the USA. As a result, the FTC has been scrutinizing that, and it's been ratcheting up. I mean, they've brought several cases in the last year, and the consequences for making a false or deceptive made in the USA claim have gotten worse. So, sorry about that.
You say they have been prompted indeed by an upswell of such cases? Has there been more action in that area?
They have brought more cases in the last 2 years than they had previously, and the consequences are more dire. The FTC has several remedial tools. One is to try and get consumer redress, but they really need to show there that a claim comes from that someone bought this because of the Made in USA claim. That's harder to do. But a few years ago, Congress gave the FTC the authority to write a rule about Made in USA claims on labels, and the FTC, and writing that rule, defined labels very broadly. So it's not just a label that would be on a package, but at least according to the FTC, if it's in a catalog, it's a product description, or it's in an internet shopping site and there's a product description, the FTC's rule, that constitutes a label. Now,
we don't take the word label literally in this case.
Well, the FTC does it. There's been some criticism that they went beyond sort of what Congress authorized them to do, and I suspect at some point somebody who's getting sued by them, it may be worth it to challenge. The reason the rule is important, though, Robert, is because for violating a rule, the penalty is $50,000 in excess of $50,000 per violation. So it could add up quickly. Most of those cases, settle because of the enormous, hammer that the FTC holds. So because they've been bringing those cases, and because business, they're trying to give business some advice. Now, what was promulgated in July is staff's advice. It was not formally blessed by the commission. I don't know exactly why that is. It was a little bit odd. I mean, the commission obviously looked at it before it went out. There may have been some quibbling among the various commissioners about the wording, so they just pushed it out as staff advice.
So we should not expect then the actual commissioners themselves to follow up the staff guidance with saying, yeah, we agree. And it is now officially coming from the commissioners, but this is just going to sit like this?
I think it's going to sit like this. There's nothing terribly controversial here. I mean, it's not a gross departure from what the commission has done in the past or how they view these things. It explains their thinking a little bit more. As most things with the FTC these days, it's an aggressive interpretation of how they look at these things, but it's I don't think you would see a tremendous U-turn from the commission, even if there's a change in administration.
What kind of product categories does this pop up in as being of greatest concern?
It runs the gamut. I mean, they've brought it for kitchen products, appliances, hardware, tools. Just several examples in the last couple of years. There's separate rules for textiles and apparel. So there's a textile labeling rule that applies separately. That textiles is one of the areas where you have to say where the product is manufactured and where it's sourced from. You don't have to say that for the overwhelming majority of products. It's just something that it's an optional claim. So if you make that claim, you're taking on a burden to substantiate that claim.
Or you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but once you make the claim, then you're subject to the rules, right?
Exactly, Robert.
I see. Okay, this phrase all or virtually all. I get what all means. I'm not sure what virtually all means. What qualifies in that area?
I'm shocked you couldn't determine that after reading the FTC guidance on this. There's a case several years ago, Supreme Court dealing with obscenity, and Justice Potter Stewart said, well, I know it when I say it. And the FTC kind of takes that approach with virtually all. So there's lots of examples there. The cost of the various constituent products is something that's considered, but it's also, they give an example in the guidance about a watch. And if the gears or the mechanism is made outside the United States, and that might only be 10% of the cost of the product, especially when you consider the time to put together, but that's such an integral piece to the timepiece that it would not allow the all or virtually all claim to be made. They give examples, they give illustrations, but there's not a matrix in the FTC guidance to which you can apply. California, on the other hand, does have a similar statute, and they apply a 10% of sort of cost or value test. It's a little bit more defined than the FTC.
They try to quantify it, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, but the FTC has scrupulously avoided trying to, sort of create a matrix that a business can follow. So the FTC likes to do that. It gives them a little bit more wiggle room. And
yeah, there are some words that seem on their face to be okay, but the FTC considers them to be vague claims, like created, produced. I mean, tell me a little bit more about what constitutes a vague claim.
Well, that's a great question. And created is really one of the words that, when I'm counseling clients, I tell them to avoid that because, created, does that mean that the idea for the product was happened in New York City, where I am today, or, sunny California, where you are today? Or does that mean the product was actually manufactured or assembled there? So because created has multiple meanings, the FTC wants you to avoid that. And they really want claims to be more specific. If you're, you can say, made in the USA of foreign parts, that's fine. But if you can't just say made in the USA unless everything in that product is.
Yeah, I imagine the word assembled seems pretty clear to me. I mean, it's tantamount to admitting that parts come from elsewhere, but that it was all put together in the United States. That would be acceptable?
It's acceptable. I mean, it has to be more than just sort of a turn of a screwdriver. That's the sort of the screwdriver test. There's got to be some transformation of the product in the assembly. But you need to qualify your claim, and the companies that get into trouble is where they assemble it, but they say made. It's the broad claims that generally get people into trouble.
So how should companies go about making good disclosures, qualified disclosures about made in USA? What guidance do you give them?
Well, you have to do your homework. So you need to understand, where your suppliers are sourcing their raw materials from, where they're assembling constituent parts that end up in the final product. And you have to be vigilant about changes there. If you know that your supplier has made changes to their supply chain, you need to follow up. You need to require your suppliers to certify the amount of product that's made or assembled here, so that you can, take a holistic view of your product and determine what claims are reasonably supported. I mean, the FTC will not require perfection, but they will require that you've got a reasonable basis. And the more expensive the product, probably the more homework they're going to expect you to do to substantiate your claims. If it's a very low-cost product, not technologically complex, it may be easier, and the burden may be less. But you have to figure out whether it's worth it.
Why do we care, Leonard? I mean, is it an expectation of quality that made in USA signifies? Is it simply brand reputation? It just seems cool that it was made in USA. I mean, what is the whole feeling about why we would bother to specify and qualify so strictly?
So I think there are two motivating forces here. One is the government believes that these kinds of claims move the needle, that if there are two similar products on a store shelf and I'm trying to decide which one to buy, and I see one's made in USA and one's made in Taiwan or made in China or made wherever, I'm going to buy that. And so, I may even be willing to pay more for that product. So, they're trying to protect consumers there. There's also some sense here that you're trying to protect U.S. jobs. If companies can make made in USA claims without actually making things in the US, that's not so good for maintaining, manufacturing and assembly jobs in the United States.
Leonard Gordon of Venable LLP, I want to thank you so much for telling us a little bit about what the FTC is up to these days on made in USA claims and what companies can do in order to stay on the right side of those regulations and guidance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Very, very much enjoyed speaking with you.